I'd like to welcome y'all back to another episode of Beyond the Fear podcast, the place where y'all come for motivation, inspiration, uplifting, and overall positive message. I'm your host, DJ. And man, today I just want to talk about a conversation I was having with one of my coworkers the other day. We were just randomly just talking about life, things that we're going through, good, bad, ups, downs, just, regular, typical stuff. And he's kind of going through some things right now, and I was just telling him, man, trust me, I was just going through a lot of what you're going through right now. I was just going through it, and I'm still kind of in the middle of it, going through it. And he asked me, does it get any easier? And i I just paused for a second, looked around a little bit, and I just smiled and I said, honestly, I don't know. But all I can speak for is myself, and what I can say is you get better with dealing with it. It doesn't feel as hard, because you learn how to deal with it. You learn what helps you deal with stressful times. You learn who to talk to, who not to talk to, who can help make things better, who can make things worse, who brings out the good and the bad in you as far as like your emotions during stressful time. You start to learn those things. So you get better at managing now, whether, because we're all different. So, for some people it does get better with time. So for some people it may not, it may get worse with time. I don't know. But what I can say for myself is the type of people that I have around me, I learned how to deal with it better. And, and I just told him, like, as far as things that helped me was, like I said, having the right people around you, therapy, things like that. Even though I haven't been to therapy in a little minute, I definitely need to go back. But, just telling him how, going to therapy, learning how to deal with my emotions, learning how not to just clam up and not talk to people when I'm going through stuff, because that was just my default. That's what I had done for most of my life, is like when I'm going through something, when I'm angry, when I'm upset, I just like to be to myself. I don't like to say anything. And then, I just hold it all in, and then and all that pressure just builds up. And then I end up exploding on people who had nothing to do with why I was angry, So just learning how to let off the steam by venting to people, venting to the right people, not just venting to anyone who can, use your stuff, use those things against you, but just venting to the right people and people that you trust. So, I was just telling them those things, the things that helped me get through, some tough times. And like I said, I'm still going through it, but it's nowhere near as bad as what it once was. I feel like I'm starting to get on the other side of the hill, and I'm starting to come out of, what I've been going through lately. So, just trying to tell him, like, keep your head up, stay strong, keep pushing one day at a time. Find those people that you trust, the people that you can talk to, vent to those people. Don't just hold the stuff in, because I could tell, when we were talking, I could just tell by the way he was looking and his mannerisms that, it's stuff that's been eating at him, and he's been dealing with it for the most part probably by himself. He may say a few things, but he hasn't really told anybody like what's really really going on, what he's really thinking, what's really on his mind. And I can totally relate to that, because I've been in those places where you're drowning on the inside, just your emotions and everything that you're going through. You are drowning, and you would love for somebody to throw that lifeboat, that lifesaver out to, just extend that hand of friendship or whatever, so you can just talk to somebody, because you're going crazy holding all this stuff in your head, but you don't know how to talk to someone. Or for me, I didn't know how to be comfortable being vulnerable, you know what I'm saying, or being okay with being uncomfortable with being vulnerable. I guess that would be the better way to put it. I didn't know how to do that. So for me, it was just like just holding the stuff in. So as I learned stuff, I was just telling him that, like, you have to learn how to be okay with being uncomfortable, with being vulnerable, because you have to trust people enough to let them in, to know what's going on. And mind you, I'm not saying you got to divulge everything, but you have all this pressure built up because you're not talking, you're not releasing, you're not letting it, you're not speaking to people, you're not letting people know, because there may be something that they could do to help, especially if it's something that someone's doing to upset you or offend you. You got to speak up on those things. But and I understand for a lot of us who never learned how to control our emotions or how to deal with our emotions or how to handle our emotions in a productive way, we only know 0 to 100. We only know how to keep it completely calm and quiet, or we're going off the handle. So, you know what I'm saying? We don't know how to, or it's very hard for us to regulate our emotions enough to where we can have a conversation with someone about something that's bothering us. And especially if the person tries to deny it or tries to deflect or tries not being account or tries to not be accountable for what they did, it can trigger something in you and you're going off, you know. So that's the thing, is just making sure that, you know, when you're triggered, you're doing what you need to be doing, or you learn, you know, you first of all, you know your triggers, so that when you are triggered, you're handling things way better than, you know, before, you know what I'm saying? So that was one of the things for me, is I had to learn my triggers. I had to learn the things that trigger me, learn the things that trigger these negative responses in me. So that way, when things happen, and I can feel myself being triggered, I know, okay, I need to either remove myself or I got to let this person know, hey, let's change the conversation, change the subject, whatever the case may be, whatever I need to do to not go over this edge, because I know me, I know myself well enough that once I go over this cliff, there's no coming back. Once I get to that boiling point and now I'm erupting and I'm going crazy and I'm, you know, saying everything that's been on my chest, there's no going back. There's no walking that back, you know, because I'm just there. Because again, you know, being, you know, growing up the way we grew up, people didn't teach you how to regulate your emotions. That wasn't a thing. You know, you had, you know, it was just literally 0 to 100. There was no middle ground. It was just either you were calm or you're going off. So again, I understand where he is, where, you know, you want to talk about things, but you don't know how to. You don't know how to talk in a calm way. You don't know, or you just don't know how to be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? Because you, for whatever reason, you weren't allowed to be, or you weren't taught to be, or you didn't have enough safe spaces to know, to feel comfortable with being vulnerable with somebody. So I completely understood. So, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just talking to him and I'm just kind of opening up about stuff that I was going through and things that I was feeling, just to let him know that, hey, this is a safe space. We can talk about, you know, the things that you're dealing with, and, you know, and there's no judgment here. And so he finally, you know, just started to open up and we talked. And, you know, I could tell that, man, you know, some of the tension that was in his shoulders, some of the tension that he was just in his body, period, you know, he started to relax a little bit, and, you know, just open up a little bit more about the things that, you know, he's dealing with and what's going on with the, you know, people around him, you know, situations that he's dealing with. And I could just tell, like, he was, even in just explaining the stuff to me, he was getting frustrated all over again. So, you know, I was just making sure that I reminded him, like, hey, it's cool. You're not in the middle of that right now. You're talking to me. You don't, you know, but I understand, because there are times when I could be talking about something and it'll bring back that frustration that I may have felt in the moment of when I was dealing with something. It'll bring back those emotions. And as I'm talking to somebody and telling them, I'm having to, like, you know, again, because I understand myself a lot better now, I have to stop and, you know, just kind of collect myself, because then I'm getting upset all over again over something that may have happened a few days ago, a few weeks, few months ago, whatever the case may be. But, you know, talking about it is bringing up the emotions again. And now it feels like emotionally I'm back in the middle of it. So I completely understood. So whenever I saw him kind of getting triggered, or what I viewed as him getting triggered, 'cause mind you, I don't know him that well, yeah, outside of the one conversation. So really, I don't know him at all. So, you know, I can only observe. And whenever I felt like maybe the conversation is sticking in a sore spot for him for too long, you know, I would try to move the conversation along to other places that, you know, just to kind of keep him in a good mental space, because I know how hard it is once you get to those places, and now you have to check yourself out of those negative spaces and go to work, or to be positive, smile at customers, things like that, you know, be, you know, to be a good co-worker, things like that. I know how hard it is to get out of those places, in your head once you get into them. So just trying to make sure that I was giving him the space to have the conversations that he wanted to have, and speak about the things that he wanted to speak about, and let him know that it's okay to talk about these things and to feel comfortable enough talking to me about whatever, while also balancing making sure that he doesn't go too far, or he doesn't get to that place in his head where it's going to be hard to come back from. So it was just like a weird balancing act. But man, it was overall, it was a good conversation. It was it helped me to remember a lot of things about myself, that I've learned over these past couple of years, especially after starting therapy, that I may have forgotten or just not thought about. And it just reminded me of where I was before I started therapy, and how lost I felt, and how lonely I felt, and how I just felt like there was nobody that I could really confide in. But in truth, I had people. I just didn't know how to be okay with being vulnerable enough to talk to people. And and that's a tricky thing, especially for young boys who are told, you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to have emotions and toughen up and all of those things. And mind you, I'm not saying that to make excuses about anybody's behavior, or negative things that they do. I'm just saying it to say it's hard to tell somebody to live one way, which is like no emotions, no crying, stop being a baby. You got to be a man. And and giving them this idea of a man as this stoic figure who doesn't have emotions, who deals with everything. He just protects and leads, has all the answers. There's like this flawless thing that they have to live up to. And then real life hits you, and it's just like you don't know how to deal with your emotions. You don't know how to regulate your emotions because you've never been taught. You've just been taught, hey, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. But you've never been taught, how to deal with stuff, because it's going to happen. Things are going to happen in your life that make you want to cry. Things are going to happen that make you want to be angry, that make you want to be sad, that make you want to be depressed, upset, all of these things. And it's like when all we do is sweep those emotions under a rug because we don't know how to teach our boys how to deal with those things, then we grow into young men who don't know how to deal with them. And that's where all that recklessness, a lot of that recklessness comes from, is because we don't know what we're doing. We haven't been taught how to. And mind you, I understand. I've said it on here. I love my mom to death, but it was just certain things that she could not teach me about being a man because she wasn't one. There was things that she could teach me about being an adult. There was things that she could teach me about being a good human being. There were things that she could teach me about, whatever. But there were certain things that she couldn't teach me because she never lived it. And so, and I didn't always have the best positive male role models in my life. So again, there were things that I was just inexperienced with dealing with and navigating because I never understood it and I was never taught how to deal with it. And so I had to learn, I had to do crash courses, and I had to learn the hard way. And so anytime that I get to talk to somebody who's going through similar things that I went through or going down similar paths that I went down, I try to give them as much game as I possibly can, and be as honest with them as I possibly can about things that I went through, things that I messed up, things that I got right, things that I got wrong, why I got them wrong, and hope that they're listening and paying attention and absorbing the game that I'm giving. But if they don't, they don't, but at least I want to be to them what I needed at that time, or what I needed at that time. And even there may have even been people, there were teachers and things like that who were trying to teach me, and show me, but I wasn't trying to listen. So I don't get mad at anybody who hears it. It goes in one ear. Anything that I'm saying, it goes in one ear and out the other. I can't get mad because I remember being that age and being in those places in life where you didn't feel like people really care. They're just talking. They're just saying something. It doesn't apply to you. That's never going to be me. I remember having all of those thoughts and just it going in one ear and out the other. So I can't say that I didn't have people. I may have not had somebody consistently there every single day, but I did have people here and there who would see me doing stuff and would just kind of try to tell me like that's not the right move, or and I wouldn't do that if I was you, or just trying to really tell me. But being young, thinking, hey, no, I got it, I understand, I know the world, I've experienced this and I've experienced that. You thinking, and because you're looking at it, you're only looking at the world from your perspective, and from your perspective at that time, I thought, I knew everything, or at least I knew enough. I understood. And now at 36, I wish I could go back and tell my 16-year-old self, 18-year-old self, 24-year-old self, like, you don't have it figured out. You have no clue. And not to be condescending or anything like that, and not to make it sound like I'm looking down on them, but just to try to get them to understand, you don't even understand what you don't understand. There's so many concepts, so many things that you aren't even prepared for, that you don't even have the tools right now, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, to wrap your head around these things, you know what I'm saying, to work through these things, I would really sit down with myself and really give myself a lesson, but I would understand myself. I understand myself enough to know that I would have to break down the wall, because the first thing that my old self, my younger self, would be like, you just talking down, you being condescending. I would have taken everything as disrespect instead of taking it as somebody trying to extend the hand and give me a lesson. So I would have had to break that wall down to let myself, my younger self, know, like, I'm not here to disrespect you. I'm not here to look down on you. I think that you're an amazing young man. You have all this potential, you know what I'm saying? And I would just keep talking to myself until I started to believe it, because that was the thing. People told me all the time how smart I was, how amazing I was, how much potential I had. And I just never believed it, because it was never consistent. They only told me that, like whenever I was getting in trouble or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, you only saying this to try to get me to, but I didn't have that consistent person in my ear through the good times, through the bad, through the ups, through the downs. When life was taking me this way, that way, somebody just, hey, I see what you're doing. You don't need to be doing that. You're smarter than that. You're better than that. You're amazing. Hey, man, great job on that. You know what I'm saying? I just I didn't hear it enough to where I could believe it. And that was the problem. I didn't believe it. I heard it. I just didn't hear it enough to where it was like, maybe I am smart. Maybe I am amazing. Maybe I am whatever, maybe I do have this potential. Maybe I can go do these things. Maybe I can, and I can eventually start seeing myself going down this road, or whatever the case may be. But I just didn't hear it enough. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have those people in my corner consistently enough telling me that. So it was just like, even if I started to believe it, I didn't hear it enough, so I go weeks, maybe even months, you know what I'm saying? And it's just kind of like, then I fall back into those old patterns and those old ways. But if I could go back, just consistent every single day, just telling myself, so that I could break that wall down. So I say all of that to say, I completely understand when I'm trying to give game to someone, whether they're younger than me, whatever the case may be, but they just may haven't been through the things that I've been through. And I see them going through some of the things that I went through and struggling with some of the things that I struggled with. And I'm trying to have the conversations with them, and I see them, you know what I'm saying? I see them just kind of tuning it out. You know what I'm saying? I don't get mad. I'm disappointed, but it also takes me back to how, people must have felt with me, you know what I'm saying? Cause they see me tuning it out. And, it's just like, you don't know what to do, you know what I'm saying? So, but I just continue giving the message. I continue talking. I don't stop. I don't ever stop having the conversation, because it's that important. You are that important. Your life, your potential is that important. And I see now what I didn't see back then, you know what I'm saying? And so I just stay on, like, if it's somebody who I see on a consistent basis, I just make sure, hey, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're doing this, you're doing that, just making sure, just to make sure that they know, hey, it's somebody looking, it's somebody watching, it's somebody checking on you, even if it's something small, like, hey, I don't care what it is. I remember at my old job, it was a guy who wanted to gain some weight, hey, you went to the gym this weekend? How many days you go? Just every time I saw him, I was just asking him questions about the gym. And I remember him coming up to me like, man, I appreciate that, because he started gaining some weight, started putting some muscle on. And I remember him telling us, having a conversation. He was like, man, I really do appreciate that, because you would every time I saw you, the first thing you would say is something about the gym. And it just kind of got to a point to where I got tired of telling you, nah, I ain't go, or I got tired of making excuses, and I just started going. And I'm like, bro, that's what it's about. Us keeping each other accountable, me letting you know that whatever your goal may be to gain weight, it means enough to me for me to ask you every time I see you, hey, you went to the gym? Because I understand how important that is. I understand how important it is to have somebody, just check on you, even if it's something small, even if the person genuinely don't care, but they care enough to ask, hey, did you go to the gym? Hey, did you did your homework? How's class going? How's work going? How are you doing? How's that situation at home going? Whatever the case may be, even if they don't really care how it's going, just the fact that they are asking means something to. It could mean something to someone. Could be the difference between someone making another excuse not to go to the gym, or not to do the homework, or not to fix the problems at home, and them going to the gym, them doing the homework, or them fixing the problems. Just you constantly asking, and them constantly knowing, every time I see DJ, he gonna ask me about this, he gonna do this, he gonna do that. Like, yeah, man, because I care. I know it don't. I mean, I know it may not feel like it. I know it may feel like I'm being condescending. I know it may feel like I'm being this and that, but I'm trying to show you that I care. And sometimes it don't come across the right way. And I do understand that, because I understand the whole intention and impact conversation. I do understand that. So my intentions are well. My intentions are to be there. My intentions are just to be someone who shows up for you, even though I may barely know you, but I know enough to know, hey, this person is struggling with this. Let me just ask them, how's that going? Let me ask them about the gym. Let me ask them about school. Let me ask them about work. Let me ask them about that situation that happened last week, just to check on them and let them know, hey, I may not know you like that, but I know you went through this. We talked about it, and I'm just letting you know, hey, I'm checking up on you just to make sure everything's okay. Because again, I've seen the power of that. I've seen just how consistently just asking a question, not having to go into detail, not having to have hour-long conversation, minute-long conversations, just a simple, hey, you went to the gym? How often did you go? What you work on? Just 2, 3 simple questions. And that changed his mind to where it was like, man, let me go in there, because I'm tired of making excuses every time I see him. I want to be able to tell him, I started going, I'm doing this now. I'm drinking these proteins out. I remember you told me about that. I started trying that. That didn't work for me, but this does. I did find something that works for me, whatever the case may be. And he started doing his thing. So sometimes it's just a simple question. And again, I understand that it doesn't work for everybody. Some people are so caught up in what they got going on that, they're not in a space where they want to hear those things. And I understand that too, because I've been there. Honestly, like I said, stuff that I was just going through just a few weeks ago, people were trying to be there for me and trying to be a positive light for me, because they could tell I was in like dark space. At times I was in some very dark spaces, but I was so caught up in what I had going on, I wasn't trying to hear it. You know what I'm saying? I can look back on it now and realize that their intent was great. But in those moments, the impact, what I felt wasn't positivity. It was just like nagging and things like that. But it's also just, me understanding, because I couldn't get out of my own head, and I couldn't see past my situation to see that, hey, they're trying to be helpful. They're trying to be there for me. I'm just not allowing them to be there, because I'm feeling like whatever I'm going through, I'm having to fight it alone. I'm having to battle it alone. And because that's just been my go-to, it's been my fallback, it's been my default setting, it's just to deal with those things. And so when I'm going through stuff, it's hard not to lean into what you've always done, whether it's worked for you or not. It's just what you've always done, and you've found a way to get through it. So it's easy to go back to that, even if it's something that's making you stay in that struggle a lot longer. You know what I'm saying? It's just what you know and what you're familiar with. So I've done a better job with people who are a lot closer to me, who have access to me, talk to me every single day. You know, even if I'm having an attitude, a lot of them know like, okay, it's what he's going through. He don't really have a problem with me. It's just what he's going through. And you got to learn your people. You got to know your people. Learn, who does what, who has the tendencies to push away when they're going through something, who have tendencies to have attitudes when they're going through something, and all of that stuff. And you learn how to work with it, work through it, and things like that. But I'm trying to do better with it because I don't want them to have to. I don't want them to have to deal with my attitude, even though they're trying to be helpful. But because it's hard for me to open up and express myself when I'm going through stuff, my natural default is just to kind of close myself off and push people away and just deal with it on my own. I don't want to have to keep doing that. I don't want to have to keep putting people who are intentionally trying to be there for me, intentionally trying to help break that wall and that barrier that I put up down so that they can be there for me and help me through things, because sometimes they may have the answers that I need, but because I'm not trying to talk to them or I'm doing my best to stay away from them, I'm not always getting the answers. I'm not always getting the things that I need. And sometimes I'm putting myself in even worse situations before things can get better because of my mindset and my mentality and me thinking, okay, it's got to go this way, or it has to, I have to go through these steps. And sometimes people have the answer. Sometimes people have um, a quicker route, but because I'm going through because when I'm going through something, I like to just naturally. It's not like I'm thinking in my head, okay, I need to move away from this person. I need to push this. It's just something that naturally happens. I just naturally go inside my head, and when I'm in my head and I'm thinking about my problems, I'm naturally not texting people, hey, how your day going, how you doing, how's this situation, because I just send texts out, every other day or once twice a week, whatever it may be, depending on how often I talk to someone, just checking on them, you know what I'm saying? And so when I'm in my head, I'm not thinking about that, because I'm not thinking like, oh, I didn't text this person, or I didn't send a text out. I'm just thinking about how I'm gonna do this, how I'm gonna get out of this situation. Oh man, what's gonna be the impact of this? You know what I'm saying? So that's where my mind goes. And so naturally I just start to separate myself. And then when people try to come in and approach and be supportive and things like that, I naturally just get defensive. I don't know why. I can't explain it. Well, I guess it's just, again, because that's the way I've always been. I've always been, when things are hard and I'm going through tough times, my thing is just to be to myself, and I have to figure this out, and only I can get me out of the situation. And that's been my mindset. And in truth, I need to do the exact opposite. Again, with people that I trust, people that I'm confident with, I need to start reaching out to them, and I need to be able to talk to them, and I need to be able to vent to them to help release some of the pressure that, I'm building up in my head, just trying to do everything on my own, and I didn't realize how much mental fatigue I was causing myself. So, to go back to the original conversation, I just told him everything that I'm saying right now are things that I was telling him, about the things that I went through. Obviously I was probably going into more specifics and more details to, just to show him like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about and a lot of the stuff that you're dealing with, I dealt with it. You know what I'm saying? May not be the exact same thing, but it's similar. And so I can tell you like, man, you're going to make it through this. It's not going to always be easy. There are going to be days when it feels like you're not going to make it, or it feels like there is no end to this. But I'm telling you, stick with it, keep going, keep pushing. I don't know when it's going to get to. I don't know when you're going to get to the other side, but I do know that as long as you stick with it, you will get there, and you're going to meet people along the way. Hopefully I'm one of those people who are going to help you, that you can come talk to, and you can let them know like, hey man, I'm having a bad day, man, this is what's going on, whoop, whoop, whoop. Because I understand the importance of being able to talk to somebody, being able to have those people that you can just vent to without worrying about getting backlash or them throwing it back in your face or whatever. You just can talk to them and be unfiltered about the things that you're going through, and they can show you love, and they're going to do everything in their power to help you. Now, granted, I'm never going to tell anybody I can fix their problems, because 9 times out of 10, I can't fix your problems. But what I can do is I can be an ear. I can be a shoulder for you to lean on. You know what I'm saying? I can be someone that you can vent to. I can give advice if you want it. If you don't, hey, I can just sit there and listen. But, and I can also be someone who can tell you what worked for me when I went through similar things. Or just when I went through hard times, it may not be similar to your hard times. It may have absolutely nothing to do with your hard times, but what worked for me through my hard times, what helped get me through my hard times, what helped keep my head afloat when I felt like I was drowning, you know what I'm saying? And just be there and just be a resource in any way possible for somebody. You know, that's my goal, and that's what I try to do. So I mean, to wrap this conversation up, man, when you're going through hard times, especially if you're someone whose natural default is to close ranks and to be to yourself and try to figure everything out on your own. There may be times when that works, and then there are times when that's probably one of the worst things that you could do. You know, find those people. I'm not saying it has to be 12, 13 people. It could be 2 people, 4 people. Just find those people who you know are genuinely there for you, who genuinely show up for you, who you know won't throw things in your face, throw your problems back in your face, but will be there for you and aren't yes people, you know what I'm saying, will tell you straight up, will give you the real with when you need it, when you need somebody just to be honest with you and be real with you. Find those people in your corner and just start talking to them, letting them know what's going on little by little. You may not feel comfortable giving them everything, but you got to get comfortable, or at least you got to be okay with the idea of being uncomfortable while being, vulnerable with somebody, because you got to tell somebody something instead of holding that in until you just erupt. And now you're going off on people who've just been trying to be there for you. And trust me, I've lost a lot of friendships because of that, because I didn't want to talk to anybody. And then when I finally had no more capacity to hold the anger in, I'm snapping on whoever's who's ever in the vicinity, and they may have had absolutely nothing to do with it. And now I'm just losing friends over because I didn't want to let anybody in and I didn't want to talk about it. So, man, find those people that you're comfortable and confident with letting in, and them doing right with your emotions, with your problems, with you venting. And man, get some of that stuff off your chest and off your mind, because it will help you. But that's it for today's episode. I want to thank everybody for listening on whatever platforms y'all are listening on. I appreciate the love that y'all have been giving. And to everybody watching on YouTube, same thing. I appreciate all the views, the comments, the likes, the shares. Please continue to do that, man, and continue to follow me on this journey. And y'all already know, until the next time we meet, y'all stay blessed.